Your blended family isn't struggling because of your ex, it's struggling because you won't die to yourself. And I'm going to start right off with a story. The other day, we were at a local hot springs, and while we were sitting there chatting, an older couple came and they got in the pool that we were in. And not soon after that, or right after that, the old man decided to take his nose and blow all of the snot into the pool. It was disgusting. So he was thinking, oh, it's no big deal, right? The rest of us were like, what the heck? So my point is this. Marriage works exactly the same way. So where in your marriage are you assuming that things are fine, but your spouse is sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? Hi, everybody. We are Mike and Brenda Baker, and today we're talking about why protecting yourself is hurting your blended family.
So, I'm sure that you're wondering exactly what do snot rockets and remarriage have to do with each other. They have a lot to do with each other. See, I mean, we always talk a lot about unity in marriage, and we talk a lot about remarriage, and we talk a lot about blended families and what their mechanics are. And really, you've heard me say it a million times, they are still families. They are still marriages. The unity in a blended family may be a little harder to attain, but it's still the same unity that's in a regular family.
Yeah.
All right. You have to jump some hurdles to get there, is all. So, a few points we're going to hit on is, I'm just setting boundaries point. The you knew what you were signing up for point. And the marriage math, because marriage math, not what you thought it was.
And it's not girl math either.
And it's not girl math. No, it's God math. It's not girl math.
Yes.
So with that, let's jump into point number one. I'm just setting boundaries. We've all heard it. Okay, we have had family members that are like, I'm just setting boundaries. I've seen family members. I'm just setting boundaries. I don't know how many of you follow Gary Vaynerchuk. Vaynerchuk? Vaynerchuk.
Gary V.
Gary V. Yeah, I know he's got a bad mouth, and I know a lot of you might not follow him because of that. But he made a really good point on a video I saw of his the other day where he basically said that entire families are completely breaking apart. Families are writing off family members because they were basically talking nonsense about them. And his point was they probably talk nonsense about family members too, but yet they're willing to write off. And so you hear all of these terms like this toxic behavior, and I didn't realize, my favorite one is, I didn't realize how toxic my parents were until I talked to these other people. Okay, look, I'm just setting boundaries is, in one sense, a cry for help.
Yeah.
And in another sense, just you being selfish. Okay? So the point here is when you claim that you're just setting boundaries, that's not you talking, that's culture talking. Do you want to speak to that a little?
I would. I'm going to speak specifically to ladies. You were in a first marriage, and in that first marriage, what we have seen a lot of the times is the husband in that marriage was, now this isn't across the board, okay? It's when the woman is the one who, wasn't treated very well. That's the person that we're talking about right now. So the husband typically was one that lorded over her, did things that were just not scriptural, but then said, well, I'm the leader of this house and what I say goes and that sort of thing. We've seen that a lot, okay? Now, typically she'll come out of that type of a marriage and she'll be like, well, I will never put up with these things again. And so what we've seen happen is that she tries to set boundaries, but the problem is that she's still living in the past a lot of the times. Anytime you're going to speak about what you won't ever do again, it's never going to create peace in a marriage, regardless of, if this is your first or your second marriage or more. So go ahead.
So this is exactly where the issue comes when you find yourself in a new marriage and you have exactly the same problems.
Yeah.
And the only consistent thing about your marriage and those same problems is you.
Yeah.
Okay, because what you've done in this case, whether you're women or men, what you've done is you've taken past behavior from somebody else and you've overlaid it onto the new spouse.
I did
You've
that.
said, hey, I'm not putting up with this.
Yeah.
Not doing it. Okay, now odds are that your spouse or future spouse has no idea what you're talking about because they're not that person. And if you've made a better choice the second time around, which I pray and hope you did, then it's unfair for you to say, I'm not doing this. Now you're thinking it's not unfair for me. It is absolutely unfair for you to look at somebody who has not faulted you, slighted you, or otherwise and say, I'm not putting up with this because I'm just setting a boundary. No, you're not setting a boundary, you're taking control away. And you're overlaying it with your control. You're saying that this has been a problem for me in the past, and now that I've decided I'm not doing it, now it's your problem to deal with too. And that is completely and utterly unfair. You cannot overlay that problem on a new spouse and expect them to respond well.
Right. And that's something I did. Every time Mike would want to leave the house without me, except for when he was going to work, I would freak out and I would immediately think, oh, he's just going to meet a girlfriend. Oh, he's just this. Oh, he's that. He had never done anything that made me actually think that. I was just living in the past. So, ladies, I'm not yelling at you. I'm telling you, this is the reason why blended families and remarriage can be so difficult, is because our past seems like the today when it's actually still just the past. So yeah.
Well, and so as far as boundaries go, boundaries are completely unfair. So boundaries are you basically blowing the snot rocket in the pool and expecting everybody involved to be okay with it, right? Because it's okay with you.
Right.
All right, not true. So that brings us into point number 2.
I think before we move on, though, we need to remind you that when you struggle with something and you need a boundary, remember the boundary is for you, not for a barrier between you and other people.
Yeah.
I think we try to start sticking up for ourselves, and we have the right heart on it. We want to be protecting a little bit, just because something has been said in the past and it hurt our feelings or something like that. We have a good reason, but remember, those boundaries are to keep you safe with yourself, that you're going to be the one that is going to honor your agreement with you. Okay? Now that's different than I'm never going to put up with this again. Okay? So, and we can go into that in a different video about the actual, what those look like if you want that. So if you do, put your comments below and we'll be happy to do another video.
Yeah, many of the videos we do, whether you realize it or not, are based on questions we get from you guys.
Yeah.
So that brings us to point 2. You knew what you were signing up for. Now, here's what I will say. The majority of the time that I've ever heard it, it's come from the woman towards the man. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible to go the other direction. I'm just saying that is my lived experience with it. So you knew what you were signing up for is basically your way of justifying poor behavior on your part.
Yeah.
You're saying, well, you knew what you signed up for, so that when you're treating the spouse poorly because you favor the kids, or because you favor the ex, or because you favor your mom, or because you favor your dad, or because you get the point. When the whole you knew what you were signing up for is your way not of laying a boundary and not of stating a fact, it's your way of, once again, well, this is passive aggressive in a way, because you're passing the buck off to them and saying that this is now their fault.
Yeah.
Your poor behavior is their fault. They knew how you were. They knew what they were in for. They knew what you were bringing to the table. That's not always true. But they knew, which takes everything off of you and places it on them, which utterly unfair again.
Yeah.
So you've taken behavior that is, now when they start to react, suddenly we've got narcissistic behavior on your part, because it's like, I told you, and you want to blame it all on them still. So this whole you knew what you were signing up for thing is selfish and self-centered. And it's not scriptural. It's just not. Yes.
Now, if you have a friend, a family member that's not in your blended family, whatever, a church member, somebody like that you legitimately are trying to just talk to them and tell them what's going on in your life, and then they say, well, you knew what you were getting into, it's time for you to never talk to that person again about anything related to your blended family or your remarriage, because they don't get it. And that is one of the main reasons that we started this channel and we started our school community, is because we got that. We didn't have anybody that we could talk to. And so we wanted to give you guys a place to have good advice where you could ask questions and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you knew what you were getting into. For one, to a degree, it's true. You knew what you were getting into. No, we're not denying that to a degree. There are probably some things you should have thought through before you entered into marriage.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter now. You're here. We're here to help you fix that, right?
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, it's utterly and completely false, because you don't always know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Okay. There are times when I've seen it with soldiers, a woman will come across as completely supportive, completely on board. I mean, all of the buddies like her, all of the mom and the dad like her, and they get married, and that guy, soldiers again, that guy deploys 6 months later, and 2 months into it, she's slept with 3 guys. And everybody is shocked. Well, you could say, well, you knew what you're getting into. Well, no, you don't always know what you're getting into, because some people hide things well. Now, I don't say that so you can beat your spouse up about things they might be hiding. I'm saying that because we need to take that into account. We have to have some grace. God gives us grace. We have to give each other grace. Which brings us to point number 3. Marriage math. Okay? This never ceases to amaze me. The amount of feminism that has crept into the church. Case in point. When I was a much younger person, we were married. I'd say it was within the first, when I was furniture moving, was that in the first 5 years?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, within the first 5 years of us getting married, Brenda started staying home and being a stay-at-home mom relatively soon after we got married.
Yeah.
It wasn't too awful long. So at one point, I was driving truck and moving furniture. And there was a gal there who had been a stay-at-home mom. She was very loud, very obnoxious, and always in my face. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I just took it. I'm not going to say that at all, because I would fire back with, a lot of times I fire back with scripture, because she claimed to be a Christian, but she was always attacking me. And I remember one day in particular, kind of came to a head out on the dock, and she said something about me being a chauvinist because my wife was at home. And I was like, what? And we'd had this discussion, but she just, out of the blue. And she said, oh yeah, she's got to be home doing dishes so that you can be here working, because she's the good little wifey. Now, there was a phone on the dock. And if you've watched very many of these videos, you know that's not who Brenda is.
No.
Okay, I literally walked over to the phone, picked it up, and she was fairly close, shoved it into her hand, and I put my fingers up and I said, you've never talked to my wife. How would you like to ask her that question right now? And she quickly backpedaled. Okay, so here's my point. Stuff like that doesn't belong in the church. She wants to claim God on one hand and then attack me for being a godly husband on the other. Really what it came down to is it was jealousy, because she didn't understand marriage math. Okay? And I'm willing to bet a lot of you people watching right now do not understand marriage math. And I'm sure that you're very intrigued now. What is marriage math? God has I'm not talking numerology. I'm not a numerology guy. Okay? Brenda finds numbers interesting. I have no interest in that, okay? But I don't like math. But this is very simple math, okay? Now you're thinking that in marriage, I can already hear it in your head. I can smell the smoke and I can see the gears turning. Well, 1 plus 1 equals 2, Mike. No, 1 plus 1 equals 1. That's marriage math. And the two shall become one flesh. One flesh. Now, each one of you, respectively, can't guarantee each other's entrance into heaven. You have to do that yourself, yes. But as a unit, you are one. One. That is marriage math. If the thought of two people giving 100% to their marriage is just too much for you, then you should have never gotten married. Because marriage is not 50-50. And marriage is not 100-100. Marriage is a singular 110% from both people. All right? Both of you make up that 100%. Not 100-100. Both of you make up that 100%. That 100%. That is marriage math. That is how God views you. Because Christ died for his bride. She was so important to him. That is the model in marriage, right? And so you need to understand marriage math. One flesh does not divide into percentages. One. This is what God was trying to hammer home. We all talk, and I don't know what, there's a lot of different backgrounds that watch us. But my conviction is that when people ask, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, are they one or separate? I always say the answer is yes. Okay? So the point here is God is trying to help you understand who he is in this too. Okay? Because you've got the helper indwelling Christians, you've got Jesus who came, but Jesus is also the helper according to the scripture, and then God, God came as flesh, as you see in John chapter 1, and dwelt among us. I mean, there's all these things. He needs you to understand what oneness is. And in marriage math, that's where 1 plus 1 equals 1. Just 1. So all of this silliness about, well, him, and well, her, and well, no, it's you together. No bull crap. You together. You make up this marriage. You. Both of you. As one flesh. You want to throw in?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just remember that, yeah, Mike's getting a little angry, but he's not angry at you. It's really that Satan is so crafty and he makes us think that X, Y, and Z are the right things, and they throw us off course very, very easily. And so that's why we bring this to you. Math is very, very simple, and God's math is perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And so you and your husband or your wife, you are perfect and complete. You're one unit, right? So, yeah.
All right, so I know, well, hopefully both of you are sitting here listening. I do know we've looked at the numbers. We know that most of our viewers are women, but we do have a large contingent of men too, just not as big as the women. So with that, I want to say something to the men. Okay, a couple of things. One, you should step up at home before you ever step up at work. Now, I'm not suggesting you can't do both. We've had successful businesses, but I have been primarily a plumber for the last over 20 years. What I did at work was just what I did for a check. It was not who I was or what I did. What I did was I was a father and a husband. Well, husband and a father, if you want to get technical. And work was always second. Now, I say that, now that does not mean that I gave any less effort at work, but work was always second. So why do I say this? Because I have seen many men who have put their families first and then don't necessarily do that well in their career, but don't care because their family is happy. They provided everything for their kids they thought they could. Now, on a side note, I think that we sell ourselves short a lot of times in our careers, and that we could excel more and bring our family, as a family even, in that world. But we're not going to go into that here, okay? I'm talking about the guys who said, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to be there 110% for my family. And those guys, their kids are great. They have a great marriage. they're not driving a Rolls Royce, but they don't have to.
Yeah.
Because success for everybody looks different. $1 million to some people is $40,000 and a mortgage that's paid for, right? Whereas to others, it's millions and millions and billions of dollars, right? So, but I've also known men who put their career first and lost their kids. Not Christians. More than once, not Christians. So, why do I say that? Well, because when you look at your wife, I want you to ask yourself a question. Does my wife feel like she always has to lead? Is your wife always telling you what to do? Is your wife always calling the shots? You know why? She doesn't trust you. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say there aren't some women with control issues. There are absolutely some women with control issues. I personally have asked some very strong, I've been involved in conversations with some excessive feminists, okay? And I have asked the question, if you could find a man who you actually trusted, would you follow him? And across the board, they said they would.
Yeah.
I was floored at the answer. So their problem wasn't with men per se, it was with trustable men. So if your wife or your fiance is constantly telling you what to do, is constantly calling the shots, for one, that's not scripture, okay? It's an unscriptural marriage, I'll just tell you that right now. Why? You have to ask the question, why doesn't my wife trust me to handle this? And then you need to step up and you need to go have a conversation with her about why that is. And you're either going to get down to the root of the problem where she's got control issues, or you're going to get down to what's most likely the root of the problem. She doesn't trust you, and this is why. Because you need to know that. Because for all you know, like at the beginning of the video, you've been shooting snot rockets in the pool, and she doesn't understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you don't see the big deal. But when she speaks, you should shut your mouth and listen.
Yeah.
Good leaders listen. This isn't about your wife telling you what to do. This isn't about getting bullied around in the house. This is about you opening your ears as the leader of the house and listening, and then you guys coming up with a plan to change that. We have seen very strong-willed women who were leading their husbands by the nose in the beginning turn that around to where the husband was leading and the wife was okay with it.
And she was following.
But well, in this case, he had a lot of work to do. Gaining trust is not an easy deal.
No. And I would say that usually when women don't trust, yes, there's some background things that happen in their past. They didn't trust their dad for whatever reason. But I would say the second biggest reason is that the husband is actually not even asking the wife. He expects her to just go along with whatever he says, whatever rule he says, whatever. Yeah. I mean, and you can understand that as a woman, if you're never being heard, yes, that breaks the trust because there's no relationship if you're not going to talk. So, anything else?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, if you are tired of saying, oh, it's no big deal, but then your spouse is, suffering, it's time for you to grow. And so we get asked a lot if we do one-on-one counseling. And what we've found is that one-on-one does not work long-term. So we have found that group coaching is much better because it's more effective. There's other people that are going through the same things, or they are asking questions that you're not willing to ask. And so that's how we do all of our coaching is in groups. So that's why we built the Blended Family Momentum Skool community, and the link is down below. And so if you're ready to die to yourself and build something stronger, join us there. And with that, we'll see you inside. Bye.